Okay, so now we are recording, and okay, we have multiple attendees already. Now there is four people: Graziano, Daniela, Marco, and Maurizio. So, people, if you guys want to ask something to Joe, you can use the Q&A button that allows you to write down a question, and so that Joe can have it ordered properly, can reply to all of you. So meanwhile, we wait for the first question. Can I ask you, where are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm in Northern California right now. I've
All
been
right.
visiting different racetracks in my Tesla. And so I've set up my Tesla, one as a race car, but two as a hotel room. So I have a bed in the back, a mattress from Amazon, and then a cooler for food, and then my clothes and groceries in where the feet would go of the rear passengers. Then on the outside, the car I'm supercharging right now is a race car. So you can see on number 12
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant.
is the Tesla Corsa Challenge. And here is Northern California. I just stopped by Starbucks on supercharging. Now this is exciting to me. Here is one of the Tesla new semi chargers. So this is how they charge the Tesla Semi. They plug in charger. Take an existing tech.
Okay.
Oh, did I lose the connection? Oh, where did I lose everyone? I'm sorry. Did you see the Tesla Semi charger?
Yes, we did it.
Oh yeah. So they use an existing module, the supercharger, and to scale up, they just add more of them. So they scale out instead of scale up to get, an entire semi. It's exactly what Paulo wrote in his book Scrum for Hardware, is how Tesla is doing it. And they're now the second most valuable car company in the world. And they're doing what
Yeah,
Paulo teaches.
yeah, yeah. Well, and you as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, so we have now many people. So, guys, please write down question for Joe. This is ask me anything session. So you can ask Joe anything you want to know in advance for our training that will be rescheduled in next month. We hope that this emergency will recover soon, so that we can start again traveling and meeting openly without fear. And in the meanwhile, do anybody of you have some questions, and just write down on a Q&A. So in the meanwhile, we don't have any question yet. I'm gonna ask you something more. So let's start with the foundation of your story. So Wikispeed. So can you brief tell us how you decided to participate to this prize? Why you wanted to be involved in that with Wikispeed?
Yeah, I on my honeymoon, so 15 years ago, I was driving on a beautiful winding road. It's actually on the island of it's in the Hawaiian island chain. It's the island of Maui, and there's a beautiful, I thought, beautiful road that winds up along the side of a cliff. There are many roads like this in Italy, but there are not many in the continental US. So for me, this was a special experience. And I remember feeling something near my stomach that was really pleasant, really happy. I enjoyed this feeling of physical agility. I loved it. And for some reason, I had this awareness. I don't know where the thought came from, that if all 7 billion people on the planet tried to get the same enjoyment that I was getting, it would make the situation worse. And that to me was the definition of unsustainability. If all 7 billion people on the planet can't do it and have it be just as good or better, it's not sustainable. If 7 billion people tried to drive that same beautiful winding road, it would be gridlock traffic. They wouldn't all fit. The pollution from those cars would be so intense, it would damage the jungle next to the road, which is part of why the road was so beautiful. And the white wave caps, by the time they clapped against the cliffside next to me, would be gray. I've been to Coney Island in the US, where there's a beach right next to the very busy highway, and that's how it is. The soot from the highway is so much that the white capped waves, by the time they touch the beach, are brown. And also that it would smell like repaved highway instead of like fresh ocean breeze and jungle. And you wouldn't be able to drive quickly. It'd be gridlock traffic. And for some reason, that sat in my stomach as a feeling, saying, I love this joyful mountain driving, but it doesn't scale, or at least I don't know how to make it scale so that everyone could enjoy it in a way that's good for the environment, or even neutral for the environment. It's net, I believed, a negative. And I didn't know what to do with that feeling. It sat with me for years. Later, I was working on a project for how cars in the US get license plates. It was a software system called C-Stars for the state of Colorado, how every motorcycle, boat, trailer, truck, sport utility vehicle, car gets its license plate. And I was writing part of the rules engine. So what paper do you have to walk in to the government office to hand them in order to legally get a license plate? And I realized that because of this research I was doing for the software project, I learned how to become a registered road legal automotive manufacturer, how to create new cars legally, create the correct paperwork so I could get license plates in the US. And it took me many, many months of nights and weekends, but I was excited and I had the time. I didn't have kids yet. And I put myself through all the paperwork because I was working on the software project, and I became a registered road legal automotive manufacturer. And that's when WikiSpeed began in 2006. But I didn't know what to do with it. I was making prototype hobby cars, but I still had this environmental presence, and I didn't know how to reconcile that. Then in 2008, I received an email from a coworker. They said, you seem to like cars. There's this thing called the X Prize, the Progressive Insurance Automotive X Prize. Can people make really, really efficient, fast, sporty cars that feel good, fun to drive? And in fact, they had to be really efficient, twice as efficient as a Toyota Prius, more than twice, and road legal. And then they had to be fast and sporty and feel good to drive. And I had this crisis of awareness, this psychological phenomena. I said, this is why I was born. This is it. This is how I'm wired. This is that feeling in my stomach. What I want to do is make that feeling that I got on that beautiful mountain road. To me, it was beautiful. It's called the Road to Hana. There's many roads like that in Italy. That feeling I got on that driving road, in a way that if everyone wanted to do it, it wouldn't hurt the environment and might even make the environment better. And I tried with WikiSpeed and set four world records in the process, and learned a lot about what's now called Scrum for hardware that Paulo has documented in his book. Well, where does that go now? Well, WikiSpeed made some really fast, really efficient, really environmentally friendly cars that were also very safe. We competed against Tesla in the X Prize, and we outlasted them. Tesla withdrew, they failed. And WikiSpeed beat them by placing in a higher position, outlasting them and placing higher. Now, the Tesla Model 3 is honestly, truly the more comfortable car. I can use it as an office. It's quiet and sound deadened. I can make this call from inside the car, and it's incredibly fast. I have my racing helmet and then my office bag and my laptop, and I can charge. It's a mobile office race car hotel room. And that's farther than WikiSpeed got. That's where I wanted to take WikiSpeed. Elon Musk put $70 million US into it. I put $27,000 US into WikiSpeed. I'm amazed we did what we did, and I hope we continue to do what we do. But honestly, if my goal is not how do I make myself rich, And if instead my goal is, how do I support this feeling I have inside me that is for this pleasure I get from sports driving in a way that's friendly to the environment, I've repurposed myself to say, how can I boost Tesla? How can I make them more cool to more people? And part of it is by racing, which I get to do what I love to do, and it spreads the awareness. And I'm having a tremendous amount of fun doing it. So right now I consult to companies on what I learned with Paulo, the book Scrum for Hardware, and that's what makes the money. And then between that, I don't pay rent anymore. I have been living in my Model 3 and racing around on different racetracks, making friends and business contacts, which results in the next paid consulting gig. And that's my new lifestyle. I'm currently working with a mail forwarding service that as mail is received, they'll scan it and email me all the mail I get. They'll auto deposit any payment I receive, and they'll hold any packages for me or forward them to any pickup location I want anywhere in the world. And my address is in Japan, and they take that mail in Japan, deposit it into my Japanese or American bank account, depending, and I can live anywhere in the world. And right now, I choose to live in my Tesla Model 3. I have my racing helmet, my office bag, my cooler food, my Amazon mattress, and Starbucks, and I'm set.
Awesome. So talking about Scrum for Hardware, we've been together to visiting the sub in Lidköping, Sweden, and that was very impressive. Where it's not the most impressive thing we have seen together, but we can talk about the other company yet. But let's talk about Saab Aeronautics. Now it's 2 years ago. What is the thing that still today you think it was more impressive from what we have seen that day?
Oh, I would also like to hear your feedback on this, Paulo, of course, but I'm happy to share mine. What I was so impressed by was how faithful their simulation was. How every day, multiple times a day, their simulation of the airplane was updated down to each individual bolt. So if a supplier changed a bolt, or if someone on one of the teams changed any hardware or computational capability in the plane, it wasn't called done. The definition of done included the simulation was updated. That let them try ideas at the speed of design. And I've never seen that in any of the other military programs I've worked in so far. So multiple times a day, the teams could try a new idea, and they would they'd run a script of the aircraft or a group of aircrafts even going through different missions. It's regression testing, it's automated regression testing at multiple hours a day, full fidelity with their hardware. And that is what I believe why that plane improves so quickly. Paulo, can I ask you the same question? What were you most impressed by when we were there together in Linköping, Sweden?
So, as you know, I'm passionate about flying. So I love to fly in simulators.
I used the automated scripting for a mission, and I did throttle up and throttle back. You flew it.
Yeah. And what I remember from that, of course, everything we have seen was very, very, very impressive, especially the simulator. What impressed me a lot was the fact that the guy who was showing us the simulator was in fact an Agile coach, was a Scrum Master. So it was the lowest technical person in the entire building, 4,000 people. And still, when you join the company, they teach you how to fly in a simulator so that you can use the exact terminology with pilots. They have 8 full-time pilots working with them. And they are real military pilots. I mean, they are not airline pilots. They are real military pilots. They work with them. And so they think that all the people, including the Scrum Master, is capable of turning the jet on and take off and know how to fly it. Means that you are really, really close to the product. You are really, really close to the end user. So that's my definition of user centricity in a so complex environment. It doesn't matter how complex it is, to be in some way empathic with the user. You have to understand the challenge. And they accomplished perfectly, teaching everybody how to fly. So for the students, I want to remember that they learn, when they got hired from the company, to learn how to fly at the simulator, and then they can get actual real lesson in a private, the private license, the first level. And the sub gives time to study and part of the money to the flight, the hour flight, so that people that it's passionate about it can actually even try to fly themselves. And so I think anybody in any company in the world, they should be very, very close to their user so that they can understand. And that's really, really inspiring, because we met other very big company producing very, very famous airplanes together. And the time, we can name the company, of course, but the time I came to Seattle to visit you, remember, the last CSM in a Wikispeed shop, I was sleeping in a hotel close by your apartment where some of the other people were staying. So at dinner, I met many of them, and I found this nice lady that was attending the training and said, "So you work for that military aircraft company, right?" "Yes, I do." "So very interesting. What kind of project do you work with?" And she named a very interesting airplane, very interesting. So I asked her, how different is this airplane you're working with from the other one, very famous? And she couldn't name one feature. She said, "Well, I'm a mechanical engineer, I'm not a pilot." And that's surprising. This is really surprising, because it means that the entire project is divided like in a work breakdown structure. And once you have that small part you have to work with, you lose the big picture, right? And that's, I think, it's the recipe for disaster, when you have very high skilled employees losing the big picture of the product. And so that's really what incredibly inspired me in Sweden. And when I see companies say, "Well, our product is so complex," why not like a military aircraft?
Paolo, I love how you brought up the engagement point, the morale point, the excitement point. You happen to just say there, for everyone on the Ask Me Anything to hear, that when the project by its work breakdown structure is split into pieces, the whole is lost, the way this particular large aircraft company did, versus the modularity approach you write about in Scrum for Hardware, where people must do their own integration into the whole. Well, I will add to that, if I may, that the real problem after all that isn't even that they've lost the big picture. That's critical for decision making. They're hampered. But the real problem is that they're then not excited about the whole. And when we visited Saab in Sweden, in Linköping, we were told by executives there, and when we asked employees, they said the same thing. Saab has to lock the doors on weekends to prevent employees from coming in to work more because they want to. They're excited. They love planes, and they're working on the whole plane. So they know about the plane, and they know the differences between their plane and other planes. Whereas it's these other big companies, people are forced to work nights and weekends because they feel they're behind on the Gantt chart on their work breakdown structure project plan. And I think the real problem there, the cause is exactly what we all just heard Paolo explain. So now we know how to fix it. But the real problem in terms of speed of delivery, quality, talent abandonment, people quitting, knowledge retention, people quitting, is that people aren't excited about the product anymore. They work on a subsystem of a subsystem in a Gantt chart to a date on a Gantt chart, and they can't trace anything they do back to the mission. Whereas at Saab, partly because of the real-time feedback of the simulator, people see how what they just did last hour changed the efficacy of the mission. And they see that directly in airplane sales as well. They're working directly with the sales folks for their primary customers being the Swedish Air Force and the Brazilian Air Force. And they see that real time. That keeps the excitement up, and that makes this living agile mindset, which is the real point. All these practices, these technical practices, are required to maintain the agile mindset, that excitement where people can work in autonomous teams towards a known goal and get real-time feedback to the goal, improving. That's the punchline. What I think I've learned the last 6 years, though, is for anyone on the call who might be in a coaching perspective or an agile evangelist, is if I try to sell the agile mindset, I don't sell it. People don't buy it. It doesn't work. What I have to sell, I think, is the business result. And it sounds like to upper management, that's tools, processes and tools. But what really matters is the individuals and interactions. But I have to sell the processes and tools to achieve the business result. And the way those tools must work is to, as effectively as possible, create the individuals and interactions of the agile mindset, because that's actually what gives the business result. But I can't sell, I don't know how yet. Teach me if any one of you have learned it. I can't sell, I'm going to come in and help grow the agile mindset. What I can sell is certified leadership executive seminars on executive-led agile transformation and the tools that will implement that, the seminars, the sessions, the classes, the coaching. But that's not what gives them the business result. They can sit through that and know that information and not get the business result. What does is if it clears some of the frustration that allows the agile mindset to appear. I think that's my current operating theory for those of you that make this part of your business or need to convince your business to grow it.
Yeah. So we have a question from Andrea De Muri. He asked, I heard in one of Joe's presentation about the speed with which Tesla can modify a body part between new design and production. I remember in 1 week. Can you confirm and tell us how they got there?
Oh, it's way faster than that now. It's way faster than that now. Yeah. So the last public figure, there's better internal data, but the last thing we can all quote, this is public, is 27 changes, hardware changes to the Model S in 1 week. The number is way beyond that now, but we don't get to be specific about that number. So that's 1 week, 27 changes sustained. I mean, that's the normal velocity, the normalized velocity is my understanding of that figure. But the actual figure now is way, way past that. So if you buy a car 1 week apart, it's significantly improved, and that never ends. And it likely never will end. So how did they get there? Musk and his engineers are quite upfront about they have autonomous teams that can make their own decisions. They can all talk to each other with no hierarchy. Any employee in the company can talk directly to Elon if they want to anytime. There's zero hierarchy. There's no waiting for your manager, manager's manager. Most groups don't even have managers or managers' managers. They don't even have them. So it's fully flat in terms of communication. Everyone is empowered, including budget empowerment. For large sums of money, they've got to ask someone, it's true, but they ask them in less than an hour. And the answer is yes or no in less than an hour. Then that's the first step of how they get there. Then they measure each team on efficiency. How efficient is that team to the company's mission? And the teams are responsible for driving up that metric. Now, exactly how that metric is measured depends on the teams. But the mission they're measuring against is the overall mission. It's not number of cars sold. It's how many gasoline cars have been replaced, how many tons of CO2 are not going into the atmosphere. These are the types of decisions that drive the acquisition for a solar company from a car company, because it's not about the number of cars sold. It's the overall environmental mission. And every single team in the company is measured against that and only that. There are not other metrics. When investors question Tesla, saying, what's your average cost per unit versus your sales price per unit? So for each car, how much does it cost you to make? And for each car, what's your profit margin? Musk said, we don't care. We're making tons of money, and they are. But he said, we don't care. We don't even measure teams that way. And the investors lost their minds about that. This is a major publicly traded firm. You don't measure that. You don't care about that. They didn't even care. Musk essentially laughed down this very senior investor analyst from a very senior firm, saying the only thing we measure is efficiency per team, and we leave that to the teams to improve it. And they are now the second largest automotive company in the world. They've passed Volkswagen. They've passed everyone except Toyota. Many analysts think they're going to pass Toyota, and they don't measure with any cost accounting, any cash accounting. That's not how they run the company. That's how they got there. So with each team measured on its own efficiency, the teams are driven to buy their own machinery, go to their own training, to cross-train on finite element analysis or computational fluid dynamics. The teams are responsible for getting the right skill to maximize their efficiency on their piece of the mission, their modular architectural piece of the mission. And these self-organizing teams are beating everyone right now.
Awesome. So we have another question from Daniela Rinaldi. She's a Scrum Master that she's been working in Scrum in hardware for many years now. And she asked, from your experience, what are the biggest challenges, the biggest difficulties in applying Scrum in the manufacturing hardware environment?
Thank you for the question. It's lovely. And Paulo, thank you so much for translating it for me. Thank you very much. I will be honest. This is recorded. I hope it goes to YouTube, and I might get real criticism for this honest answer, but I'll be honest. What I actually believe, what I actually perceive to be the problem in manufacturing is people just don't want to change the current structure. And by that, I mean physical structure. This machine is here and it's bolted to the ground here. That machine is at our supplier and it's bolted to the ground at the supplier. Yeah, it'd be more efficient if we put them next to each other with a designer with a laptop next to them. But the designer wants to keep sitting in the office. And that machine, we want to keep it at the supplier. And this machine, we want to keep it here. Well, if we don't change the structure, I don't think we're going to get structurally improved flow. And if we don't change structurally improved flow, I don't think we're going to get a better design feedback loop to the designer. And we end up having, if we're not willing to move things, people and machines and production stock, we end up with waterfall. And it doesn't change. And no matter how many certified Scrum Masters they have, which I do think are necessary, they do need people who are skillfully trained in how to conduct this work. But they have to be able to change the structural flow of the system for the hardware to change. Same is true in a software company. Imagine if everyone was trained as certified Scrum Masters and certified Scrum product owners and certified Scrum developers. Some of them went to scaling framework training, and they're not allowed to change their code check-in process, code repository, add any new code tools, any new refactoring tools. They're not allowed to write any automated tests, and they can't change their check-in and their deployment process, which is a separate waterfall organization. How much faster do you think they're going to be, no matter how much Scrum they really know? Not much. And the feedback loop won't change, and the business performance won't change, and the customer and investor perception won't change. That's exactly the same in hardware. These self-organizing teams have to be able to self-organize their work. And when that's not allowed, I see it as stops. It doesn't work. Now, Paolo, because that question was asked in Italian, maybe it's best if you give a summary in Italian, so that everyone on the recording or on the call right now are able to have the answer that they might want.
Ok, I will go very, very quick. Quindi il problema è legato al fatto del flusso del lavoro e mentre nel software e nelle aziende cognitive il cambiare il flusso del lavoro vuol dire cambiare un aspetto organizzativo che può essere difficile, però viene alla fine fatto se uno vuole adottare questi metodi. Nell'industria questo vorrebbe dire spostare delle macchine che alcune volte sono piantate nel pavimento e quindi sono avvitate e quindi può essere anche qualcosa di molto costoso. Se non si cambia il flusso del lavoro, questo flusso del lavoro sarà un flusso di lavoro che alla fine è waterfall. Quindi questo può essere un grosso impedimento nell'adozione di un processo che invece è iterativo incrementale, non vuole essere a cascata. Dan.
Wow, that was very well. No wonder you summarized my life in one book and many other people's learnings. So no wonder you could do it. Well played, Paolo. Well played.
So while we wait for the next question, we don't have a more question on the queue. I would like to answer to the same question about regarding my experience. Oh no, wait, there is a question. So no, it's not a question. It's a thank you. It's with a kiss from Daniela for you.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Daniela. And Paolo, until what time should we host this Ask Me Anything? It's currently 32 minutes past the hour.
Yeah, it was a 45-minute max, so it's gonna be maximum 10 minutes. We close. So
sure, okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer this question from my perspective. Probably I met more Italian company than you. And well, there is another question. Let's move on with that question. What are the main guidelines for applying the Scrum method? So what do you say? Where should you start when you want to apply Scrum?
Oh, wow. My answer would be we start with making current progress visible. That requires that we have some mutual understanding of what progress would be. And that by itself is pretty difficult in most big companies. But if we can try to create a definition of what progress is, then we make visible our progress. Then we give people autonomous permission on short cycles to experiment to improve that progress. And if we're missing any of those steps, the system breaks. Another related definition I've heard that's not my own is find the biggest problem, fix that problem, find the next biggest problem. Now, that second one allows for the traditional idea of top-down management to find the biggest problem and fix it on behalf of everyone else, and that misses the Agile mindset. The overall effect is true, but what we need are actualized, excited people if the system is going to perform and sustain performance. That's the concept of agility as I understand it. So to do that, we need permission to execute experiments to improve that visible progress from all staff. And that's why it's so important, I think, to have all staff know how to behave in an agile way and network with each other. That's, I think, why the classes and seminars on agility are so important, because everyone needs to know how to do this to become a complex adaptive system and not a leadership top-down hierarchical system with cogs underneath, which is sometimes efficient, but misses the rapid pivot and rapid improvement of agility. Paolo, I'd love to hear your perspective and answer on this.
So my perspective is that first thing first, start for business. Now, if you are starting a Scrum from a bottom up, of course, it would be very difficult. When I've been approached by companies, especially lately, thanks also to the visibility I got thanks to you, I normally talk with senior leadership. And so we started talking about business, what's important for the company, and what's important in order to get the success. And then we talk about value sources in the market and the value stream. and then we say, okay, let's build a team around something to achieve. And getting the agreement before forming the team on the vision of the goal of that team helps a lot to overcome other problems, something like we don't have enough sponsorship, we don't have these, because when you have a team that is going to deliver something that matters for the company, many impediments get solved by themselves, and that makes things very easier. Instead, if you don't start from business, what happens in companies that you have people working on the work and the agile work, and people say, we can do the agile work, we can do the retrospective because we have to do the actual work. That's crazy. You want to do the retrospective for talking about the real work. That should be only work. That shouldn't be the work and the agile work. And so, yeah, that's really, really, I think this is key. Now we have other question coming. With all of this autonomy, given, this is Andrea De Muri asking, with all this autonomy given to the team, is there any form of strategic global planning at all? Using which approach?
I love this question, and thank you, Andrea, for this. We should probably write a blog on just this topic. This is part of the Certified Leadership Seminar that I teach, and it's part of, I imagine, all of the strategic consulting that any of the people that make Agile a business on this call do. The strategic planning is what I would call the group scrum. You can use any framework that fits, but I don't think that's the point. The point is business decisions are able to be made in less than an hour. So how that happens is a communication method where anyone in the company can propose new topics, new pivots, and anyone in the company can receive new topics, new pivots in less than an hour with deliberation of the people that are knowledgeable on the topic. And by knowledgeable on the topic, I mean people who own the interfaces affected by the topic. It's all the modular architecture, which Paulo's written his book all about. I'd highly suggest everyone read it if you haven't already. Now, the method I'll use personally then, because that's the abstract parent goal that fits any method. The method I'll use is I'll have the product owners from every team be able to be called according to the Metascrum pattern, which I believe that one was authored by Jim Copleen. If not, he presided over its authoring, and I should give credit to the correct author, but I believe that one is Jim Copleen's. And he simply architected a very lean version of what I was just talking about. The product owners meet with any knowledgeable party, so maybe the CFO, who might also be a product owner, depending on the structure of the company, or a Scrum Master or a development team member. And they discuss the business impact of the decision. And they have to be able to make the decision in that meeting according to the Metascrum pattern, which satisfies the requirement I gave of making the decision in less than an hour and receiving the new instruction or changing the instruction. So everyone required to make the decision is in one room. They make the decision according to the Metascrum pattern. Then all product owners split that backlog item, what's been decided, into backlog that fits their teams. And if no one needed to split backlog, they shouldn't have been in that meeting because it meant they're not directly affected by it. So they split backlog from that decision and they take it to their teams for their teams to refine. Now I'll add something additional. It has to be done in front of the teams. The product owner, Scrum Master, development team members should never be out of hearing range and sight range of each other ever, especially in this meeting, because we don't want any one person making technical decisions or morale binding commitments on behalf of each other. It needs to be a team-driven decision for this vigorous team spirit to maintain itself. No secret backroom meetings. So the scrum rooms I use are great big rooms with all the teams in them. And when we have Metascrum, the product owners go to one corner or the middle or one end of the room where everyone can still hear and see them. That does limit these effective sizes to Dunbar's number. When teams need to negotiate in larger groups, an emissary from one of these groups goes to the other to negotiate this large component. the component itself is at least limited to Dunbar's number, and that doesn't work as well. Now, interestingly, I've yet to see an organization of any size, no matter how many tens of thousands of people, deliver faster than elegant lean Scrum limited to Dunbar's number. So if the organization is that big, those, in my opinion, should be separate products that are not dependent on each other. And dependency should be limited to the amount of people that fit in one room. It is possible through the modular architecture Paul writes about to have independent modules that coordinate, and each module is limited to Dunbar's number. I'm not sure that's necessary. Whereas different product lines, different sellable products, closer to how Tesla does it. They have thousands of employees, but they have multiple products. There's people working on the Model X, on the Model Y, on the Model 3, on the Roadster, on the Semi, on the solar products, and on the SpaceX package, which is a SpaceX product for Tesla, or that's how it's branded, etc. And they don't have a massive size. That would be my answer for you.
So last question, because we are run out of time. And Graziano Grespanchi asks if he say, I'm really interested in applying the Agile methodology with our customer, but it's often difficult to have regular communication due to many commitments. How is it possible to convince the customer to have an Agile approach when starting a project?
Paolo, I think it's very important to answer this from the Italian context. I will ask you to go first, and I will also add something briefly at the end.
Well, I will answer in English, of course, so you can understand what I'm saying.
Thank you.
So I often get this question, especially when we have big companies producing something very, very big. For example, in gas and oil, that's very often. So they have a very rigid contract with a lot of details and some clients that are not really cooperative. And they say, how can we convince them to be agile? And I said, look, if your customers were agile, you wouldn't need the Scrum at all. You need the Scrum because your customers are not agile. They have a very poor communication, and they are very rigid. So when you discover something that you need to change, they are very rigid. So you want to have a process framework that allows you to explore very quickly all the risks in your project, and also have a framework of sharing information, a regular cadence, so that when your customer sees that they can have more information for their own benefit, they will want that. It's not that you have to convince them, you have to inspire them, say, look, we have an update for you, if you want, every 2 weeks. And it's gonna be your project that we are gonna build for you. Wouldn't you be interested? And if you start from an invitation rather than a convincement, I found out that it works better. And of course, if you have a very uncollaborative client, you will have a problem any framework you will use. So that problem is still there, regardless if you use Scrum or not. The thing is, if you use a framework that amplifies communication and collaboration, the chance of success are higher. What do you think, Joe?
I completely agree, of course. I think that was brilliant. I'm really glad it was recorded. I hope someone here writes a blog here attributing that to Paolo and publishes it in both English and Italian. And I hope you do it within 7 days before it gets stale. I thought that was excellent and elegant. I think I can even add to it. I'll try.
Please.
I would create, thank you. I would create a backlog of how to mature the client's interest. And I'd run that as part of the same Scrum that delivers the product to them. So there'd be cards specifically with the persona of this client. As this client, I've increased my interest in our agility because, and then you have these items in the backlog, and they're prioritized, mixed in according to mitigate risk and build buy-in. Now, what those cards often are, in my experience, from my perspective, is things that make it fun. I do think it's a very human approach. Yes, the purpose is business success. It is. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the world of business. It'd be purely for psychological reasons. The purpose is business success. I do think the way we spread agility, honestly, is it's so fun, people want to work with us. And it's so fun, we want to keep doing it. And whenever that's less true, whenever we wake up gritting our teeth or we think our client is, we have an opportunity for product backlog refinement to say, we're building something in a suboptimal way or building suboptimal stuff. We're not having a lot of fun. By us, I mean all our personas, our regulators, our managers, our procurement specialists, if you still have a company structured that way at all, the client, the influencers, the internal stakeholders, the team itself, the subject matter experts we rely on, however you're structured, all the inputs and outputs to make it done, our input and output list of personas. If they're all not having a bunch of fun, there's an opportunity for better product backlog refinement. And I believe that is what makes this so effectively catching, what makes it grow. And that goes in the backlog and is treated with the same level of respect, responsibility, and business viability as any risk mitigation or capability increase, is what I would suggest. And that's what makes it fun anyway. So Gandhi is quoted as saying, the end does not justify the means justify themselves. And I believe that. So if the means are not full of transparency, happiness, courage, respect, focus, then no matter what the result, we failed. And how we get those means is product backlog refinement, because that's what decides what we do and what we don't do. And it affects the team working agreement, which is how we decided to do it.
Awesome. So we ran out of time. We are perfectly in time for closing this question and answer session. We thank you very much, Joe, and we hope to see you in Italy very, very soon. We have a lot of interesting racetrack here, so we can even go to Imola or Vallelunga or wherever you want to go and race together. And looking forward to see you in Italy. And tomorrow you will have the virtual keynote for the attendees for Agile for Innovation. This recording, if you're okay, is going to be on YouTube for everybody. Awesome. And so thank you everybody for attending this session and have a good day.